If these latest Nintendo rumors are true, the implications are massive. In today's video, we're not only going to be talking about the rumors themselves, but also the general opinion, and also a couple of things I want to mention that I feel like people are just not talking about, but it's very important. I don't like wasting time, so let's go right into it. As we already know, Nintendo already announced on Twitter that they will be announcing before the end of this fiscal year ending on March 31st, the successor to the Nintendo Switch. So it should really come to a shock to no one that, Nintendo is gearing up for their next console. But something interesting happened this weekend. Rumors started to pop up about a Taiwanese part supplier that is suggesting that the mass production of Switch 2 could start by the beginning of the end of Q3 2024. Which that basically means by the end of this September. I'll put a link to an article in the description if that's something that interests you. But the thing is, this is at the end of the day still a rumor. But a rumor that kind of adds up. Because I don't think it's going to be a shock to anyone that Nintendo has to start building these Switch 2s, because it's not IKEA at the end of the day, and nobody is expecting to just get a box of components and having to put it together yourself. However, let me emphasize this again, this is a rumor. But for the rest of this video, I'm going to run on the assumption that this is true. Now the first question we have to ask ourselves is how long does it take to build all these new consoles? Now I've seen some people online just pull a number out of their ass basically and say that it takes about 6 months. However, nobody really is citing their source, so I can't say or really understand why it takes these 6 months. I did a little bit of digging myself, and on a random website called DVD Talk, somebody says that their guess is about 3 to 4 months, but I'm not really ready to trust that either. But for the sake of this video, I think we should go on the air of caution and let's pretend it's going to take 6 months. Of course, things could go well, and it could take less than 6 months. Things could go horribly and take more than 6 months, but let's just go with 6. Now, if Nintendo is in fact going into production of this console, what does that imply about the reveal of this console? Now, this could go two ways. Typically, when consoles start to be manufactured, that is when leaks start to happen, because Nintendo can no longer hold their cards close to their chest. Now, of course, I don't work in manufacturing, but I would imagine that they have to give these manufacturing employees, instructions on how to build this console. Other than that, it would be like trying to build a puzzle without the box and seeing what you're trying to build in the first place. And even if they don't give, the instructions on how to do it and somehow they just know how to do it, at the end of the assembly line, they're going to know what they built because it's built and in their hand. And of course, all these factory workers sign NDAs and they're not supposed to talk about anything, but let's be real. Plenty of people on the internet have very loose lips. And Nintendo already talked about this during an investors briefing that one of the big parts of their identity is using reveals and surprises. So if that is indeed the case, chances are Nintendo is probably sooner rather than later going to reveal the next console. And things are actually lining up that it actually does sound plausible, because from September 26th to September 29th, Nintendo is going to be at Tokyo Game Show 2024. I did see some people talk about this because, of course people would, it kind of makes sense, except if you actually read beyond the headline, you would know that yes, Nintendo is going to Tokyo Game Show, but they're only going to be in the business meeting area, not the exhibition area. Meaning, for people like me and you, we're not going to be able to hear what's happening behind closed doors. So I really would not be expecting a reveal during the Tokyo Game Show. But after Tokyo Game Show is when things start to get interesting. I fully expect that Nintendo is going to be talking to partners about the next console, and will start planning on when the actual official launch for this console will be. And people also have to keep in mind that there's probably a high chance that Nintendo themselves don't even know when this console is releasing, and by that I mean like a precise date. They most likely have a ballpark of when they want it to be, because between now and release there can still be a lot of hiccups that happen along the way that might force them to either wiggle the release up or down. But there is one coincidence that I find a little bit funny. But before we move on, I just want to say one quick thing. If this is your first time here, hey, my name's Acadrien, and I post weekly Nintendo videos. I would really appreciate if you would consider liking and subscribing, but without further ado, let's go right back into the video. Because the Nintendo Switch, the original Switch we already have now, was revealed in October and then released in March. And I think a lot of people are expecting the Switch 2 to kind of follow that same pathway. And I do agree to a certain point, but I don't think it's quite that simple. Because context is everything. If we look back from the transition between the Wii U to the Switch, the situation Nintendo was in then versus now is night and day different. Although this wasn't the only issue with the Wii U, one of the biggest problems the Wii U had was people just didn't understand what the product was. And let me use this chart to explain. Here are all the dates where every console was announced and released, and also how big of a gap it was. As you could see, in most cases, Nintendo actually didn't take that long between announcement to release. But I feel like at the beginning it made a lot more sense because, you know, from the NES to the SNES, you don't need that long to explain, you know, it's the same thing, but better, stronger. We just don't talk about the Virtual Boy, I put it there just for fun. But let's go back to the Nintendo 64 now, you know, it's not a foreign concept. It was a video game console that had more power than the SNES did. And with the GameCube, it was the same thing, you know, straightforward. It was a cube and it played games. And it was yet again a console that was stronger than the last one. But here is where it gets interesting. Because the Wii wasn't even really that much stronger than the GameCube itself, and it introduced a whole new gimmick. But the thing is, the gimmick for the Wii was just really straightforward because it mimicked natural behavior. You didn't have to explain all these complicated controls. If you were going to play bowling, you do it in the same way you would in real life. So, you know, the gap between the announcement and the release was only 2 months, which was very, you know, a quick turnaround considering they had to explain a new gimmick. But in this case, it worked, because again, it was simple to understand. Whereas for the Wii U, Nintendo giving themselves only 2 months to explain what it was just simply was not enough. Because although they did focus on the Wii U's gimmick being the gamepad, they did that a little bit too much, and people didn't understand that yes, the gimmick is the gamepad, but this isn't a gamepad for the Wii, it's a new generation. And as we know, Nintendo did flail around for a little bit, but you know, Nintendo was just never able to get the Wii U going. But they did learn from their mistake, and they made sure that between the announcement of the Switch and the release, they had plenty of time to clearly convey the message of what this console was and was going to be. However, there is a second rumor that just came out as well. The second rumor stems by a gaming journalist by the name of Peach Brazil, where he was stating that we should be expecting multiple presentations by Nintendo in the few months to come, and some of which have been ordered to be moved up, not further, closer to when we are now. Of course, today Nintendo had a presentation about the Nintendo Museum opening in Kyoto. I haven't watched that yet, I'll be watching it after I get this video done. So now that one presentation's out of the way, some people are expecting either a partner showcase, full-on direct, indie showcase, and that in September, we could be hearing about, you know, the Switch 2. Now, don't get me wrong, I hope that I'm wrong about this, but I don't think this is going to happen. First off, he's already been wrong before, stating that we were going to be getting a Nintendo Direct in April, to which we didn't, we just got our regular June Direct. And then I might be mixing up my sources, but I kind of feel like I remember him saying something about the February Direct being a full-on, you know, general Nintendo Direct, and then at the last minute having to change to say, oh no, it's not going to be that, and it ended up being a partner. I don't know, I might be wrong on that one, but my sentiments still feel the same that, you know, I just don't feel like it would be happening. But all that yapping aside, let's talk about why we're here. How does all of that I just talked about tie into the Switch 2? Well, the consensus for this console is that it's just going to be iterative, right? It's just going to be pretty much the same thing, the Switch, but stronger. Meaning, realistically, we don't need that full 5 months to explain what this console is going to be. We're already familiar with the hybrid nature of the Switch. All we need to know is that, you know, the graphics are going to be slightly prettier. However, the expectations nowadays have shifted with expected release dates. We expect games to take a long time, and I think people are also ready to wait a long time for this next console. I mean, we've already been waiting long enough. What I mean specifically is between reveal and release. I'm personally fully expecting at least 4 months between the reveal and the release. So for my timeline prediction, I think Nintendo is going to go to Tokyo Game Show, talk to their partners. That will allow them the months of October, November, December to get their ducks in a row for a reveal. A reveal that I personally think will be happening in January. Nintendo could totally release it before the holidays, and I don't think it will affect holiday sales. The people that waited this long to buy a Switch are not going to be buying Switch 2 day one anyways. But I still think that Nintendo really wants to focus on this holiday and get that out the door. Then in January, we would get a reveal of this console, I am guessing more mid to late January. Then early to mid-May, the console will finally be in our hands. But also keep in mind, these dates are what I'm predicting will be the latest. This is almost like worst case scenario. Because this is also keeping in count like a little buffer period of like a month or two, just in case something goes wrong along the way. But either way, I can just sense that the Switch 2 is almost here and I can't wait to play it. But as per usual, now I turn the question to you. When do you expect Nintendo's next gen hardware to be revealed? Let me know down in the comments. And until next time, 話啦〜